Alright, so if you're like me, you buy a lot of games, and I'm sure your Steam game list agrees. And sometimes you want a little more bang for your buck. Sometimes you want a game that lasts more than 8 to 10 hours. Sometimes you want a game that lasts for potentially hundreds of hours. So you pick up the latest big open world sandbox game that everyone's been talking about for months, and you fall headfirst into the common AAA video game circle jerk. World spaces that are larger than my ego and just as worthless, gameplay that stays as interesting as an 18-year-old in bed, and constant side quest fatigue, only for you to drop the game 10 hours in to play something more interesting. And by more interesting, I of course mean you're gonna buy another of the exact same fucking game over and over and over again. Or you just go back to play Skyrim. But every now and then, you'll find a game that lasts for hundreds of hours and it never gets old. A game that has so much content, yet expertly laid out so you never feel overwhelmed and you always have something to do. In this video, I want to talk about one such game franchise. A game that can be upgraded and new content can be added to it seemingly forever. Today, I'm talking about the never-ending brilliance of Monster Hunter. So to start off, we need to explain what exactly Monster Hunter is. What do you do? What's the appeal? And why do people like it so much? Well, to answer the first question, what do you do in Monster Hunter? Well, take a wild frickin' guess. You hunt monsters! That's it! Period. Nothing more. It's as simple as pancakes with Down syndrome. Okay, let's go a bit deeper into what Monster Hunter is about, and I'll explain it like this. Your main goal in the game is to hunt a monster. Once you do, you carve its mangled and battered corpse and harvest its body parts like the sick, twisted fucks we all secretly are. Once you have those parts, you take them to a blacksmith to create and upgrade your weapons and your armor. Once you do that, you take those weapons and armor that you just made to fight even bigger and tougher monsters than the ones previously. Then, you carve off their body parts, make even better weapons and armor, and fight even bigger monsters. Rinse and repeat ad nauseum. For those of you who don't know about game design, this is what is known as a gameplay loop, and every game has one. It doesn't have to be the main appeal of the game, it can be more small, a micro goal that rewards the player so they can achieve the macro goal of progressing through the overall game. But progression is honestly a whole other topic that's worth its own video, so if you want to see a video about that, let me know in the comments and subscribe to make sure you see that video when it comes out. Look at me doing YouTuber things. That's a call to action, bitch. But in order for the gameplay loop to work, the process needs to be enjoyable. In other words, in order for Monster Hunter's gameplay loop to work, the act of hunting monsters needs to be fun. After all, if it's not fun, why bother? So in order for me to explain why Monster Hunter is so fun, allow me to explain another game and its gameplay loop. Imagine a Dark Souls game and how you go through that. You play through a level, get loot from said level, and eventually you end at a boss fight. That boss fight is rather difficult. It's difficult because it has moves and patterns that are unique only to that boss, and because of that, you must recognize, learn, and master all of its moves and figure out how to beat it. That process takes a while, and you'll probably die in the process. When you die, you respawn at a bonfire, meaning you have to re-go through the previously explored level to get another chance at the boss, where you'll probably die again. Rinse and repeat until you finally defeat the boss and you get that amazing feeling of accomplishment and victory that everyone loves in Dark Souls games. On top of that, when you defeat a boss, you get a good pile of souls, which you use to upgrade your weapons and level up your character so that you get powered up to go to the next area to do it all over again. Dark Souls is 1/3 exploration, 1/3 boss fighting, and 1/3 upgrading. Here's the problem. Some people like the latter 2/3 of Dark Souls, but they don't like the first third. They don't like dying and running back to the boss area. It just feels like wasted time. It's why so many people say the best part of Souls games are the boss fights. Monster Hunter completely cuts out the first third. Monster Hunter is a game that's just boss fights. Every single monster has moves and patterns that, like a Dark Souls boss, are their own patterns, and you must recognize, learn, and master it. And that is what makes fighting monsters so addicting. That feeling of getting better at the game. You don't progress through the game because your character is powerful enough or your level is high. You progress because you are getting better. You are being a more skilled player. And when you finally and completely master a fight, you feel like the most fuckable person on the planet. Yeah!
Yo!
Let's go!
Yeah! Let's go!
Ah!
It was the
We did
fucking
it.
hammer, man.
We did it, boys!
I was getting...
Alright, so we've explained why hunting the monsters is so enjoyable and how it stays enjoyable. We've talked about the brilliance of Monster Hunter, but how can Monster Hunter be never-ending? Well, the reason why Monster Hunter can be never-ending, I feel, is because of its extreme simplicity. I mean, think about it. All a Monster Hunter game needs is more monsters with every new game, and you're all set. Right? Well, yes and no. On paper, yes, if you add more monsters, you'll have a steady stream of content, but that might not always be the best thing. Many people may not know this, hell, I didn't for the longest time, but there was actually an entire Monster Hunter MMO out there known as Monster Hunter Frontier. It was an MMO for modern consoles at the time, only for Japan, Korea, and Taiwan in 2007, and while it was a success with multiple seasons and different iterations spanning all the way until 2018, all it really did was just add new monsters, and because of that, the game was incredibly grindy, and many people in the Monster Hunter community at the time didn't really call it a real Monster Hunter game. Which really sucks, because Frontier seems like it's a really cool game that I'm sure a lot of people in the West would have enjoyed, with unique mechanics that can only be done in an MMO and you wouldn't really find in a regular Monster Hunter game. Sadly, in late 2019, after going free-to-play for a month, the servers were shut down and there is now no way to play the game. You cannot play it offline, and any chances of the community making their own private servers is extremely slim, if it'll even happen at all. The reason why I'm mentioning Monster Hunter Frontier is because Monster Hunter seems to be in this weird in-between state where many people outside of the community mistake it as an MMO, when in reality, it seems like it's better off as a franchise where an entirely new game releases every couple of years with a clean slate. The reason for that is because the gameplay loop can go on forever, but it's nice to start from scratch after spending years on a game so that it never really gets old. But the reason why Monster Hunter is better off in this style, I feel, is because it allows Capcom to come up with new and unique ways to actually keep the game interesting. If you do the same thing over a long period of time, eventually you're going to get bored. That's just how things work in the entertainment industry. But if you work on a completely new game, it allows the creators to work on things that didn't really work before. Work on weapons that didn't really have a lot of chance to be played around with, like the longsword's meter usage or the gunlance pods, and now the blast dashing, which is one of the greatest additions I've ever seen in a Monster Hunter game. It also allows more unique game mechanics that only that game will have. The best example being the latest game, Monster Hunter Rise, and its wire bug, allowing more freedom of movement and access to completely unique custom super moves that are just another thing that you can learn and master and be a complete badass when done so. And some of these changes and additions that make these new games their own probably never would have happened if it stayed on one game and just did the MMO model, at least to my mind. The point I'm trying to make with this video is that Monster Hunter is an incredibly unique type of game. It's so complex that it stays interesting all the way through and it keeps your players interested, while at the same time being incredibly simple at its core, meaning it leaves a lot of room for the designers to mess around with things and try different and unique things, meaning you'll almost never run out of ideas. Not to mention all the monsters actually in the game are incredibly unique. You wouldn't find them in any other game. But above all, Monster Hunter, at its base, is an incredibly well-made, fun, and rewarding franchise that will keep you hooked forever. And that's by its design. That is the never-ending brilliance of Monster Hunter.